Chelsea have just broken the bank, and it's not even close. Morgan Rogers has completed a British record transfer, and I mean genuinely record-breaking. We're talking about the most expensive British player in football history. So today we're breaking down exactly how this deal happened, why the number is so massive, and whether Chelsea actually needed to make this move at all. Let's get into it. So let's start with the number, because it's the headline for a reason. Chelsea have signed Morgan Rogers from Aston Villa for £117 million. That fee makes him the most expensive British player of all time, beating the record that was actually set earlier this same summer when Elliot Anderson moved to Manchester City for £116 million. So we've had two British transfer records broken in a matter of weeks, which tells you everything about how insane this transfer window has become. Rogers has signed a 7-year deal at Stamford Bridge, running all the way through to 2033, and he's joining Xabi Alonso's squad ahead of the 2026-27 season. He's 23 years old, which is honestly wild when you think about the trajectory here. Let's talk about that trajectory for a second, because it's actually one of the more interesting stories in modern football. Rogers came through Manchester City's academy, never made a single senior appearance for City, got loaned out to 3 different clubs trying to find his footing, eventually moved permanently to Middlesbrough for around £1.5 million. That's the starting point, £1.5 million. From there, he had such an impact at Middlesbrough that Aston Villa paid £15 million for him just 6 months later in a January window. And under Unai Emery at Villa, he exploded. We're talking 17 goals and 14 assists across 66 appearances for Villa. Then following that up with 14 goals and 13 assists in 50 games this past season alone. He became one of the best players in the entire Premier League, capable of playing across the front line and through the middle as a number 10. He also earned regular England call-ups, picked up 22 caps, and represented his country at this summer's World Cup. So from a £1.5 million punt at Middlesbrough to a £117 million British record just a few years later. That's the story here, and it's a pretty remarkable one regardless of what club he ends up at. Now let's talk about how Chelsea actually got this deal done, because Arsenal were genuinely in this race too. Reports throughout the summer had Arsenal identifying Rogers as their top forward target, and for a while it looked like he was on course to join the Premier League champions. But ultimately, Arsenal weren't willing to match the fee Chelsea were prepared to pay. Sky Sports reporting suggested Chelsea simply need him more right now competitively, given Arsenal are the reigning champions already sitting near the top with Champions League football locked in, while Chelsea are still building. And in the end, a lot of these deals just come down to who's actually willing to put the money on the table. Chelsea did. Arsenal didn't go that far. Deal done. There's also a nice personal angle here. Rogers has spoken about his relationship with Cole Palmer, saying they've known each other since they were around 14 years old, first coming through England's youth teams together and then being at Manchester City together. He's talked about how they've discussed playing together for a while and how excited he is to actually make that happen at club level now. But here's where it gets genuinely debated, because not everyone thinks this signing makes sense. Paul Merson has been pretty vocal about this, basically saying Chelsea didn't need to spend $117 million on Rogers because they already have Cole Palmer, and the concern is they play very similar positions. Merson's argument is that Rogers is at his best as a number 10 in open, transitional football, and that's not necessarily the role he's going to get at Chelsea, where teams sit deep and compact against them. There's also the question of squad fit, because Chelsea already have João Pedro, who also operates as a number 10, plus Cole Palmer in that same area of the pitch. So the worry from pundits like Merson is that Chelsea have now bought a third attacking midfielder type player, when they arguably already had enough talent in that zone, and someone's going to end up either out of position or on the bench. Then there's the pressure conversation, which honestly matters a lot with a fee this size. Rogers is now carrying the tag of Chelsea's most expensive signing ever, and the most expensive British player in history. That's a lot to walk into a dressing room with. And the reality is, no matter what he says publicly about there being no pressure because he didn't negotiate the fee himself, everyone watching will judge him against that number. It's just how football works. The comparison being made is to Chelsea's previous big money signings like Declan Rice and Moises Caicedo, both of whom faced the exact same criticism when they moved for around 100 million, and both of whom answered it by simply performing well enough that people stopped talking about the fee entirely. That's the best case outcome for Rodgers here, and it's honestly the only outcome that actually justifies spending this kind of money. So where does this leave Chelsea? They've already brought in Joao Pedro, Liam Delap, Jamie Gittins, and Brazilian wonderkid Estevao this summer, and they're still active in the market, reportedly talking to Crystal Palace over Maxence Lacroix, showing interest in John Stones as a free agent option, and still working on a left-back deal with Rayo Vallecano for Pep Chavarria. This is one of the most aggressive rebuilds we've seen from a single club in one transfer window, and Rodgers is just the latest and most expensive piece of it. So I want to know what you think. Is this genuinely a smart signing that gives Chelsea one of the most dangerous attacking midfields in the league? Or is this classic transfer window overkill where you're stacking similar players in the same position and hoping it somehow works itself out? Drop your take in the comments. I want to see where people land on this one. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit subscribe. There's a lot more transfer window content coming, and I will see you in the next one.